the horse-drawn carriage you remember as a
Oh,
child.
yeah. Well, we had, well, there was more than one that came down the road. A horse-drawn, not carriage, wagon, farm wagon. And it had straw, and then it had ice blocks. Because back then they didn't have electric refrigerators. They had ice box. And when you hear them ringing their bells and they're coming down the street and you need ice, you go out, you wave at them, you buy the block of ice, they take ice tongs and clamp the block, and they bring it in and they shove it into the top section of your ice box that's loaded with ice. And then down below in the lower section, that's where you put all your perishable foods. But we had other, oh, I almost forgot. One time Grandpa fell. Now Grandpa was a drinker. Now I don't know if he was drunk. Yeah, he was.
When you say grandpa, you mean your grandpa, so he'd be my great-grandpa?
Duh.
Oh, okay, go on.
He was he was an Irishman. He was a hard worker. He built his own house for his own family, and sometimes when the cops would stop him, or he'd wave down the cops and tell them to take him home, and they knew him and he knew them, and they would drive him home and take him right up to the door, and then Grandma would sit there and do what grandmas did back then. But anyhow, Grandpa was drunk one time, I guess, and he was walking past the refrigerator and he stumbled and started to fall, and he got his thumb caught in the handle that you open the refrigerator door with. It, you know, sprung open like this and pulled a latch. And when he fell, I guess he put his hand up to catch himself on the refrigerator, and as he slid down, his thumb got caught, and it made him so mad he just jerked the end of his finger off, and so he had two stubs. It's funny how he fell once, but I remember he had two stubs, and they were big and round, and he could use them just like. Did you know he was also a carpenter, a cabinet builder? And this was at Masonite. And, well, that makes sense. They make cabinets out of Masonite, and he was a cabinet maker. And he sawed off a bunch of his fingers.
Like it's a normal thing.
Well, you know, just about every one of those people that worked on saws at one time or another are going to cut off a finger or two.
It happened.
So that's why he had short, fat thumbs, and several tips of his fingers were missing. But that didn't stop him. He was a... Quit laughing. I love my grandpa.
It's just funny that he tripped and his hand's stuck, and he just gets so mad. He's like, oh, and then rip.
Yeah, well, he jerked and jerked, and there was nobody at home at the time to help him.
Well,
and he got tired of just laying there or hanging there, because he wasn't very tall. And he was round. He was definitely round.
So he couldn't get up, he was just hanging by a thumb.
Well, he probably couldn't lay down all the way. You know, he was probably trying to get it up and said there's only one way out. So he probably ripped it off and bandaged it up and poured some whiskey, Irish whiskey on it. And probably went to the hospital and got it stitched up. There were other horse-drawn wagons that brought watermelons on ice, and you know, you could buy an ice cold watermelon just to cut it open for your family, or the guy would slice it open for you.
Kind of like fast food, but the food came to you.
Yeah, and I remember times where a wagon would come down and it had all kinds of vegetables. So you could buy fresh corn, you know, still in the shuck, and I think you could buy peaches and figs and apples and well, just everything that they grew down there. And since just about everybody in the family worked down there at Masonite, it wasn't very far, because I remember going with Mom to carry him lunch. So it was like 3 blocks from our house to the next road, and then that road, it was about 4 or 5 blocks, and the factory sat on the left. And they had benches out there, like picnic table benches, and we'd take his lunch to him every day. Somebody would. They didn't have any place to refrigerate it in there. And he liked his dinner cooked and fresh.
Makes sense.
He was a good old man. He took care of a lot of his own children. Well, all of his own children, but then their children, especially during the war. Oh, and there was fig trees in the backyard. And I dearly love those. Now, he also sold fishing bait. He built the cages out of wood and put screen around it, and it had a round open lid and a carrying strap, and they were called Catalpa worms. They were big and green. They were about 6 inches long, and they were twice as big as night crawlers in Indiana anyhow. Now, we have Catalpa trees, but they're called bean trees here in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Great big leaves. Well, down home, down Mississippi, they have green worms that live on Catalpa leaves. And, you know, they make a web, and they lay eggs, and little bitty worms are hatched. And we use these long fishing canes, which happen to grow right around there anyhow, and we'd wiggle the tips of them, and wiggle the leaves until the worms fell, and then we'd run around and gather them up, and we'd fill those bait containers that Grandpa made, and fishermen would come by. We'd throw leaves in there too, you know, for the worms to have food.
Mm-hmm.
And fishermen come by, and they'd buy 2 or 3. And I forget how many were in there. There were gobs and gobs in there, and I don't remember how much they sold for. But he made money there, and he made money working.
Then you kids would probably make a little bit of money, wouldn't you, for getting the worms?
I doubt it, because that's kind of
your job, your responsibility.
It helped feed the family. Of course, I had one little cousin. He ate one. Everybody was supposed to hold one up and kiss it. And this little old yeller, pointy-headed boy, he put it in his mouth, and he chewed it up, and he ate it.
During this time, What did your dad do in the war?
My dad was, he taught people how to shoot. He was a sergeant. I don't know if you call it artillery sergeant.
He was master.
He was what?
He was a master.
A master sergeant.
How old was he?
Oh, he was just a kid.
And so he was a master sergeant that was a kid.
Well, I mean, what, 20-something?
Well, yeah, that's a kid.
Early 20s. Oh, there's a picture of him in his uniform in the Van Briggle history book.
Mm-hmm.
So, anybody that's interested in what I'm saying probably has one or can get one or borrow one. And they can find out what my daddy looked like.
But did you tell them that he had Purple Hearts?
Oh, he had lots of Purple Hearts.
2 Purple.
Pacific Ocean Fleet. He was stationed in.
Was it Okinawa?
No, it wasn't that. It was P something. Philippines.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
How long was he there for?
You get a Purple Heart for saving somebody's life. And stuff.
I don't know how long he was there because I was a baby.
Oh.
I was born in 42. The war was over like in 43.
Okay, so yeah, you're just a baby. And how long was he actually in the military for? His entire life? Because he probably didn't retire, did he?
I don't know. My mother met him at a local dance for soldiers at the VFW or somewhere. Her and all her sisters were single. They all went to this dance, you know, and there were sailors and Marines and especially sailors. And, you know, it was a dance. And they went there to meet people and to dance and enjoy themselves. Because there wasn't much to enjoy back in 1940 or 1938, 39. So, you know, that the little girls dressed up and went to dance with the single soldiers.
I wanted to also know what your mother was doing while your dad was in the war, like her job.
I believe she worked at a factory, and they made masonite, which is kind of like plywood in different thicknesses, and only it's made out of particle board. And just about everybody used masonite.